Hello. Today we'll be presenting. This is the beginner's version of Kiki's Delivery Service by Toshio Okada. The journey of Kiki, the bond with the black cat Gigi, and the coming-of-age story of a girl who flies through the sky. The public face of a masterpiece everyone knows. But Okada asks, what is your perspective? Is that really correct? The eerie symbol shown by the senior witch, the crow barrier. And the truth revealed by blood. The Ghibli course will change your perspective. Let's try to decipher it together.
Yo. This. I'll explain that a little later. Why do you think that way? Second, the reason why the black cat Gigi can talk is this little witch girl can talk to her familiar cat. If you can talk to Gigi, this is also in the original work. I am supposed to be writing it properly, but however, the original work says this. When a witch mother gives birth to a girl, I keep a black cat that was born around the same time. That's right, so they were born in the same year. I'm going to get a black cat. That black cat can only talk to newborn girls. Become a special cat. But when a girl falls in love, the cat also searches for a mate, so the girl and the cat separate. So Kiki's mother was actually in the past. There was a black cat, but when I fell in love, it's set up as if they've broken up. If that's the case, it's just a regular fantasy story. But Hayao Miyazaki didn't use this setting. The reason is explained in the interview. I don't really like cats, you say. It's an incredible reason. Those guys act like they understand everything. I don't like it, that's what Hayao Miyazaki said. Tend to reveal their true feelings. In an interview with Rockanon, this is a story about the bad things I told Yoichi Shibuya about cats. Well, of course you shouldn't say that. Also, the cat at Ghibli is. I dote on them, so, well, I think it's kind of a joke, half joking. Yes, but Gigi can only communicate with Kiki. Later, I may not be able to talk about it anymore. It's for a completely different reason than the original setting. This is a rather cleverly hidden plot point. You know what? Well, if you read reference books or critical essays, perhaps Kiki has grown up and can no longer speak. Something. There are all sorts of things written here. If you don't pick up on the visual clues, it's a little hard to understand. There is also a unique encryption method specific to Hayao Miyazaki. Well, this is for next time. I'll leave that for the intermediate level. Thirdly, the topic I'll be discussing today is this third point. There are far too many plot points that are explained solely through visuals. There are really too many. Let me give you a concrete example. For example, on the night Kiki departed, on the night of a full moon, I'm leaving my hometown. When you fly through the sky on a broom, so you'll meet a senior witch. You know, this is, well, my senior, she's quite beautiful. Koji Morimoto designed the characters. Senior, since you're 1 year ahead of me, well, you're 1 year older. I'm flying with the witch. Kiki is from a senior witch. I do fortune telling. Is there anything you're good at? I do fortune telling. They say. Kiki is really impressive. This senior is from Kiki. He's quite good at magic. Well, Kiki is. For example, you can't fly without recoil. In other words, when they found this witch, trying to get closer to the witch, trying to get closer to the senior witch, lean your body to the left. You can't change course unless you tilt it. Like an airplane. The moment you tilt it, once, the broom's altitude suddenly dropped. From there, I rose rapidly, approaching the witch. In other words, the actions must not be exaggerated. Kiki cannot change direction. However, this senior witch does not do that, you see. See you later, he said, and when he parted ways with Kiki, only his ankle remained. You stretch it out with a quick flick. He was straddling a broom. By simply stretching your ankle. This witch, with a swift, no preparatory movement. Without putting any force into it, like Kiki. The broom rose with a whoosh. Go around to the other side of Kiki and say, you do your best too. He said, and headed down to his town. There is a scene. That's the skill of how he throws it. Well, this senior is actually a pretty nice person. You do your best too. I say. But, as Kiki descends into his town, he sees his beautiful senior colleague. That's nice. That's the kind of thing I admire. This part can be understood from the dialogue, but... However, this senior witch said, "The city where I'm currently training is." It will appear as a picture. This is a setting that can be explained solely through illustrations. The senior witch continued on and on after this. We're descending and getting lower in altitude, and this is the town. This is from Hayao Miyazaki. It's a sign that says, you understand, right? The town is small, but there are an awful lot of neon signs. That's right. Furthermore, please pay attention to this central part. My seniors, it's around the broom. The windmill also has a red neon sign. This isn't some random color specification. It's also done properly in the storyboards. The instructions say a red windmill neon sign. Even though the world is a big place, a place where windmills glow with red neon lights, it is decorated with red neon lights. A windmill is... This is the only place in the world where you can find this. This is the Moulin Rouge in Paris. This is the Moulin Rouge, a cabaret in Paris. It's become a rather upscale place now. However, in the 1950s and 60s, in other words, Hayao Miyazaki's youth was... This is really kabukicho. It was like the kabukicho of the world. In other words, this place is in a red light district like kabukicho. Well, for those kids, I made it to look like something out of a fantasy movie. But to all the adults who brought their children, to us adults, you can tell by this red neon windmill, right? The world isn't that great. So, it's not sweet, right? This is the message from Hayao Miyazaki. This scene is also in the storyboard, right? In the exchange with the senior witch, a country girl like Kiki, it says it's easy to manipulate them. Why is this senior witch? To toy with a country girl like Kiki is. It is written as simple. As for whether it withered, there are directorial instructions written here. Those are lines from my senior colleague. That's because the nuance changes, isn't it? My senior witch, you see, made earrings and other accessories. The meaning of wearing it will also gradually change. You start to understand. In other words, I've been doing love fortune telling lately means. In a town like Kabukicho, there are sex workers. It means that they are dealing with that customer. A play from 1989, set in modern times, about a naive and inexperienced person. A 13-year-old girl goes to the city and lives all alone. That is because of temptations like these. This is the kind of danger that exists. That's how Hayao Miyazaki is portraying it. But when children are watching, oh, there's this beautiful senior girl, and she's doing it. But, oh, I wonder if I'll be okay. And so that children can empathize. It is being made, though. However, when an adult looks at it, they might say, wait a minute. If you go down to a place like that, for a girl to live in the city. So that's what it means, in a double sense. It's designed so that you can take it off. This, that naive girl. I came to the city from the countryside when I was 13 years old. This, meaning, starting with what kind of dangers there are. I can't take my eyes off Hayao Miyazaki. This is called the textbook of Ghibli. I use it often. Basically, when talking about Hayao Miyazaki's works, it's like a fundamental textbook, isn't it? This is issued by Ghibli itself, isn't it? It's like an official document. It's on page 74. This is a story about a witch from a fictional country. This isn't a fictional story. Stories that women might encounter in modern society. Draw it. Hayao Miyazaki is like this. He has clearly stated his resolve. Modern society, that is. This isn't a story about Europe in the 1960s. This is where the point is that this is a story set in modern times. What Hayao Miyazaki is trying to depict is. This is strictly about modern Japan in 1989, during the bubble economy. When a young girl comes to the city alone from the countryside. The question is, what will happen? In other words, because of magic, I can live alone. So, it's not that kind of happy story. Of course, it ends happily like that. What kind of risks are involved behind that? A fantasy of pretty words. For the children who want to see it. Such an overly realistic perspective is. They only show it through video, like this. The plot points and settings that are only shown in this video are. Yes. That's the gist of it. The children were able to fully immerse themselves in the fantasy. It's designed to be immersive, but among the lines the audience might notice are, I can tell fortunes. I've recently started doing love fortune telling. In the video, it's difficult for those children to notice. This senior witch, a rather pretty witch, I guess it's descending into this entertainment district, or rather, red light district. So you're going to depict the scene of them descending, right? In other words, the senior witch who is falling. They're showing it to you incredibly slowly. In response, Kiki was completely unaware of this. Like someone who looks up to you with admiration. That's the perspective from which it's being presented. That senior said to Kiki, you do your best too. They say. But Kiki doesn't notice the stubborn encouragement from his senior. Shin. You do your best too. Is not such a light word, it's her vanity, or rather, the underlying reason behind her do your best. The year is finally over, and I'll be able to go home soon, he said in an excited tone. In other words, life in this city is. Actually, there were some pretty tough times, and also the things that come with being a woman. Difficult experiences include. They don't let you notice. So, at this time, Kiki's perspective was, well, a middle school girl from the countryside. I work as a hostess in Tokyo. I don't really understand how hard the older sisters are going through. I only saw it in Instagram photos. I want to live a celebrity lifestyle like this. I think being a hostess at a cabaret club is cool. It's like they're thinking about it, like they're longing for it. That's how it is. The theatrical anime of Hayao Miyazaki is more about the dialogue than the visuals. The explanations and foreshadowing embedded in these videos are. There are an awful lot of them. The Moulin Rouge we just saw is also like that. So, something on the screen, like that. If you ever think, I hope you'll get into the habit of looking it up. Actually, they put a lot of effort into creating the setting. I think you'll understand. This area is interesting. So, this is the Kiki's delivery service. Initially, there was Kiki's delivery service. It's not your average fantasy, it has 3 elements. There is a setting where the explanation will be given solely through video. So that was part 1. We will now move on to part 2. Okay, let's move on to part 2. Heave ho.
奥に置いてあったりですね、あと別の場所にあったりするんですけども、割とね、観客に気づきやすいですね、レイアウトになっているんです。で、この大きな
Yes, Kiki's delivery service is a normal. I'll talk to you once I've made a proper decision, laughs. Kiki's delivery service. These are 3 elements that make it different from a typical fantasy story. This is part 2 of the explanation of the setting using only video. There is another explanation that is given solely through video. There is a scene. This is the mother of Kiki. It's the witch Kokiri. So, she's a witch named Kokiri. So, Kokiri is these flasks and graduated cylinders, and also even the dropper. It felt like we were conducting a chemistry experiment. I'm making a magic potion. But what I want you to see, what I want you to pay attention to, is on the left edge of the screen showing Kokiri. This is a giant cauldron. Since there are flowers in it, I thought it was a vase. This is incorrect. In addition to the above, Kokiri appears in the following scenes. This. A large cauldron is visible in the image. They're always in the shot, aren't they? That's a layout that the audience will notice, too. When Kokiri is on screen. Well, they're usually placed in the back. And also, in another place. But it's fairly easy for the audience to notice. It's a layout. This. The large cauldron has a name. As for the name, in this story, it doesn't appear in the text, but it's called cauldron. The person who named this cauldron was. This is William Shakespeare. Has anyone seen this anime? I don't think there are many. Cauldron was about 30 years ago. At Tokyo Disneyland. There's something called the Cinderella Castle Mystery Tour. Did you know that it existed? Me? I remember it because I participated before. This was released in 1985. Disney animated film The Black Cauldron. However, That was probably the event, right? The witch that appears in it is. This is the cauldron used to make the devil's potion. We often hear about witches, you know. When they say they are boiling medicine, they show images of it being boiled in a pot. I often read manga. Right, the source of that image is all of them. In Shakespeare's Macbeth. It's Act 4, isn't it? In Act 4 of Macbeth, the three witches are in a cave. We are stoking a large cauldron. Among them were rotten innards, poisonous toads, hedgehog eyes, Jewish livers. Something like that. There's a lot inside, double toil and trouble. Increase it. They say things like, increase your troubles and worries. Fire burn, and cauldron bubble. Let the flames burn, let the cauldron boil. That's what it says. Act 4 begins here, but... So the witch said, having a large cauldron means, Shakespeare's, it's the cauldron from Macbeth. I hope this reminds you of this. I have high hopes for Hayao Miyazaki. Because Shakespeare's Macbeth, like the lesser-known film, The Tempest. Anyway, like Shakespeare's Macbeth, everyone is watching, right? So, he graduated from Gakushuin University. Hayao Miyazaki is to provide adult audiences with that level of education. I'm asking for it, but it's impossible. I've never seen Macbeth either. That was about 20 years ago, on the mystery tour of Cinderella Castle. I knew because I had been there. Normally, you wouldn't notice that. But I want you to notice, so I'm going out of my way to do it. When Kokiri's mother appears on screen, they show this over and over again. In other words, this cauldron is. It's a cauldron where witches make potions. I'll put it back again. This cauldron is a cauldron used to make witches' potions. Kokiri is the mother of Kiki. She is the legitimate successor to the witch. However, this Kokiri person is. I have fallen into depravity. Cauldron is. Now it's just a container for dried flowers. That's what's happening. It contains dried flowers. Like this. That's the feeling, dried flowers. It is included, but Kokiri, as a result, cauldron was a waste. The cauldron that I inherited from my parents. The cauldron inherited from our ancestors. It's used as a container for dried flowers. Kokiri is currently a chemical tool. Like the beaker I mentioned earlier. Using a graduated cylinder or a dropper. Making a witch's potion. They are, in other words, depraved beings. There are all sorts of things, like analyses of Kiki's delivery service. When you look at blogs or reviews, Kokiri is the mother of Kiki. To live peacefully in a rural town, to marry a human. They've even had a child. In other words, the witch's rollout model, happy. You could say he's a self-made man, and Kiki will also be in the future. To a wonderful mother like this Kokiri. I suppose so. That's how it's being described. Well, that's from the perspective of an average person. From Hayao Miyazaki's perspective, it's different. Hayao Miyazaki is also part of that witch family, or rather. Hayao Miyazaki also uses the magic of anime. It's like using the magic of art. So, they're descendants of that family of craftsmen. So, Kokiri is the magical cauldron cold, inherited from a family of witches. I couldn't get the hang of using Ron in a vase of dried flowers. He's the kind of person who has made a mistake. The many magical powers that were inherited. They've forgotten. These days, witches are becoming increasingly rare. The magic gradually faded away. They say it's because of the times, but that's not right. Medicinal herbs that should normally be boiled in a large cauldron. Because it's made haphazardly with chemicals, lol. Using an alcohol lamp. I'm just making it up a bit haphazardly. I don't know if it will work or not. I can only prescribe medication for rheumatism. Grandma, but your rheumatoid arthritis medicine. It's the most effective. Well, of course, there are people who say that to me. It seems like only the elderly woman from the neighborhood is left there. Kokiri, actually, as a witch. Upon closer inspection, it turns out that they were quite underachievers. That era. They blame it on that, and we who only hear the lines. They take it all at face value, don't they? Well, so Kokiri is, well, as a clumsy witch, I make quite a few mistakes. This scene isn't in the original work, Kokiri. A scene where magic fails. That wasn't in the original work, Hayao Miyazaki added it on their own. These are scenes that were added later. Kiki said, I'm leaving tonight. Wait a minute. The moment I said, in my hand, it just explodes with a bang, doesn't it? He told this story in a humorous way. Magic is when emotions run high. Expressions like power increases. I am changing it. This is really because I'm a useless witch. And so, the medicine that was created by starting over like this. I said to that old woman, your medicine is. It works for me. It's at a level where people will say. In other words, now only those who believe can. It doesn't work, does it? I guess you could call it a placebo effect. They're only able to produce that kind of medicine now. So, Kokiri is lamenting about himself. Are they seriously working on magic? That's not right. If you look over here, well, like this, medicinal herbs. We extract something like the stage before that. Originally, this is something a witch would measure using her intuition or instinct. What kind of medicine should I take? With a truly precise balance scale. So you're measuring it and calculating the weight in grams? That's how they're doing it. I haven't used the stove in years. The huge hearth in the background is. It hasn't been used for many years, originally. Because there is a cauldron hanging there. I used to try to use it. I haven't used it for decades. That's the situation. Kokiri's magical power is gradually weakening. They say it's because of the times, but originally, it was a cauldron. They boil lizard eyeballs for 3 days and 3 nights. We have to do that kind of trouble. Being too lazy. Because we're taking it easy thanks to the power of science. The real way to make medicinal herbs is to keep going. It seems you've become confused. Why is it that Hayao Miyazaki has to draw this? Was it not allowed? This episode isn't in the original story. The cauldron doesn't appear in the original story either. It's not needed. But why did I have to draw this? In other words, for Hayao Miyazaki. Because it's a real problem. In other words, by mastering the use of convenient computers. By sampling live-action data. The realistic movements of animals. This is also based on actual animal videos. Animators who draw by sampling. The number keeps increasing. As a result, the amount of sketches I've made since childhood is insufficient practice in sketching. Four-legged animals. Even when I try to draw it, the drawing is always off. They can't even portray proper everyday acting. Such. In modern times, animators are. By interacting with that young animator. So you're watching it. That is the mother of Kiki, Kokiri. Well, it's like revealing one's true nature, or something that shows it. People say it's because of the times. Well, these days it's the video generation. It can't be helped. These days it's all about CG, so it can't be helped. That's what they say, but Hayao Miyazaki is. Since the days of toy animation, that is. Is this from the era of Natsuzora? Since that time, it has been passed down from father to son, like a secret family secret. Animation techniques are rapidly advancing. So you're watching it disappear, aren't you? That year, 1989. It was right in the middle of that transitional period. So, to the kind audience of Ghibli fans, it's like, what is it? This mother Kokiri is. She's depicted like the ideal mother. Like a kind and wonderful mother. I can see it, but Hayao Miyazaki, you see, is definitely a lineage of witches. He belongs to the lineage of wizards. For craftsmen, their mother Kokiri. That's his incompetence as a craftsman, isn't it? I'm fully aware of that. Kiki's father, Okino, is. When my daughter was leaving home, I told her, if you're having a hard time, you can always come home. And then, I picked him up. If it's too hard, anytime. Come home. I end up saying it, but this is also. Hayao Miyazaki is a Roman album. Yes, they exist. The Roman album of Kiki's delivery service. Yes, there are some, but among these, parents who say such things, it's no good. He just spat it out like that. In other words, from our perspective, it's like saying, if things get tough, you can always come back. Like a dad who says. And also, don't be too strict with that daughter. Well, I guess all I have to do is medicinal herbs and fly. I can't. But the one named Kiki is. In the end, all I could do was fly. Mothers like that. She comes across as a kind and loving mother, but For Hayao Miyazaki, that was a big deal. I tell my own child, if you're having a hard time, anytime. I ended up saying, come home. Children can never truly grow up, you know. Well, I guess you could just say it like that. Therefore, the writer, Hayao Miyazaki. For animator Hayao Miyazaki, the parents of Kiki spoil their child. They're like a sweet, modern-day father and mother. Therefore, Hayao Miyazaki is, in this, Kiki's delivery service. The world I tried to depict was, it will automatically become like this. I was raised by incompetent parents who couldn't even raise me properly. The girl, that girl, I can't think about anything but myself anymore. Therefore, rather than what I can do for others, they're only thinking about what they can get done for them. So that spoiled brat can live on his own. To achieve that, you must surpass your parents. It's a story about overcoming your parents' expectations and persevering. So you'll go through a lot of hardship.